And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will be discussing recent comments made by the managing director of the IMF, where she stated that she wants to utilize this moment, this crisis that we are going through, as a new Bretton Woods moment, essentially saying that they want to utilize this pandemic as a reason to re-examine and bring about a new reset to the global monetary order and global monetary policy. Now, many of you probably don't even have an idea as to what the Bretton Woods system is, what entails the original Bretton Woods system agreement, and many of you don't even understand why the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. What gave the dollar reserve currency status? And those are the things that we will discuss in tonight's video. What I find funny about all of this reset talk is that the very people who created these problems are now coming to us and saying, we have the solution. Trust us. At a certain point, you have to say to yourself that that's the definition of insanity. These people, they were the ones who created the Federal Reserve System, fractional reserve lending. These are the people who created these oil companies and was polluting the oceans and bringing about climate change, bringing about income inequality. It wasn't us. We common folk people living our day-to-day lives, we don't own any, oil fields and oil rigs and drilling into the ocean and all of that to create climate change. We're not the ones who are, who's out here and creating these loans with the IMF and bankrupting these third world nations. We didn't do that. They did. And now these same people who did all of that are now coming to us and saying, hey, give us unlimited power. Trust us this time. This time we have your best interest. For those of us who are inclined as to what's going on, many of us, we're going to thrive. If you own gold, if you own silver, if you own crypto, if you own cash flowing real estate, we're going to outpace inflation. We're going to do very well. And this is why I keep saying to you that this is the best of times and it is the worst of times, depending on how you've been preparing for this. Because see, if you read books like The Creature from Jekyll Island, then you would understand that all of this is being done by design, because the Federal Reserve isn't the first central bank here in America, right? The money changers have been for centuries trying to infiltrate America. And it's funny that the Federal Reserve Act was passed in 1913, I believe on December 23rd, maybe a few hours before Christmas Eve, when most people weren't even paying attention. Congress was able to pass this. And then understand that first they had to get the Federal Reserve Bank, right? Then they had to slowly break away the links from gold, slowly. And then the Bretton Woods Agreement was created back in 1944, and that brought about the IMF and the World Bank. And then in 71, Nixon completely took us off the gold standard with an executive order. And now we're hearing all of this talk about central bank digital currencies. We've been hearing about SDRs, special drawing rights, the Bancor currency, like all of these different things are being floated out now. But if you read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, you knew about all this. If you read Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper, you knew about this. So none of this stuff is new to people like myself, which is why I was able to prepare for these things. I just understand timing. And this is why I keep stressing to you guys over and over again, the emphasis about learning technology and learning about cryptocurrencies, because the funny thing is, at this summit or this talk or this meeting, whatever you want to call it, they were talking about cross-border payments, a vision for the future. They're literally talking about digital currencies, right? And all of this legislation is being passed. You think that they're passing this legislation and they're talking about these things in global public forums because they're not going to enact these things? So it's important that you, if you're behind, you start catching up and you read books like, A Creature from Jekyll Island, which leads me to my next point. Please like this video, share this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Make sure that you join my email list so that I can email you when I'm about to go live, because videos like this, YouTube will not promote these type of videos because this is spreading awareness. This is spreading information. If I was sitting up here gossiping right now about someone, I would have 900 people waiting in my chat room. But when you start talking about the economy, the collapse, and how they're going to usher in this great reset, they like to suppress those videos. If you want to contact me, a link to my Instagram will be in the description below. Simply click the link, follow me on Instagram, and shoot me a DM. For those of you who are interested in learning about blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies, as well as coding, you need to sign up for My Tech Academy. We have a free 7-day trial. At a certain point, after I make video after video after video, and I'm constantly right and accurate about the things I'm saying, you have to start to take heed and take action. And that's why I created My Tech Academy, so that you could be equipped with the information to be able to act and benefit from what's to come. Because as I said, there will be those of us that will thrive, and then there will be those of us that will perish and be left behind, because the world's not going to end. It's just going to look extremely different going forward. So we have a free 7-day trial. You are welcome to test it out, see if you like it. A link will be in the description below, which leads me to my book list, right? These are the books that I encourage all of my students to read. This is a book list. And on that book list, we have the Bitcoin Standard, and we have this book right here, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. He has been predicting all of this stuff and documenting all of this stuff for so long that either it's prophecy, either he's in on it, but at a certain point, you have to start to see that this is not being done by accident. What's happening to the economy, fractional reserve lending, wealth inequality, income inequality, rising poverty, racism, white supremacy, all of these things are being used to distract you, or to use your energy, your emotions, to keep you distracted as to really focusing on what you need to be changing. Now, that's not to say that climate change isn't real. That's not to say that racism isn't real. You have to understand that why are those things real? Who are the puppet masters behind the scenes moving these pieces and making these things happen? Why all of a sudden, at the height of the pandemic, you can't go to church, you can't go to work, you can't go to sporting events, but then now you can go to large protests? See, at a certain point, you have to start looking at these things and saying to yourself that these things are being manipulated in a way that isn't beneficial for the masses. So if you can see me clearly, you can hear me clearly, type 1 in the chat, and then we can get started on our broadcast. Great. Okay. So let's go to the video and let's listen to a little bit of what she has to say. And then I'm going to read some passages from my favorite book, The Creature from Jekyll Island.
And for his contributions as chairman of the IMF's Board of Governors. Reflecting on the dramatic change in the world over the last year, I paid a visit to Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, where 44 men signed our Articles of Agreement in 1944. Our founders faced two massive tasks: to deal with the immediate devastation caused by the war, and to lay the foundation for a more peaceful, more prosperous post-war world. At the conclusion of the conference, John Maynard Keynes captured the significance of international cooperation as hope for the world. If we can continue, the brotherhood of men will have become more than a phrase, he said. As we look forward to welcoming Andorra as our 190th member. The work of the IMF is testament to the values of cooperation and solidarity on which a sisterhood and brotherhood of humanity is built. Today, we face a new Bretton Woods moment, a pandemic that has already cost more than 1 million lives, an economic calamity that will make the world economy 4.4% smaller this year and strip an estimated 11 trillion of output by next year. And untold human desperation in the face of huge disruption, rising poverty for the first time in decades. Once again, we face two massive tasks: to fight the crisis today and build a better tomorrow. We know what action must be taken right now. A durable economic recovery is only possible if we beat the pandemic.
So, back in 1944, we were coming out of war. There was a lot of war going on. And basically, the powers that be, mainly intellectuals, Fabian socialists, communists, got together and they put together the Bretton Woods Agreement, where the dollar would be pegged to gold and other countries' currencies would be pegged to the dollar. And that was the first part of delinking the dollar from gold, because prior to the Bretton Woods system, for every dollar, there was backed by $1 worth of gold. And then that's when they confiscated gold and they basically repegged gold, where it was $35 an ounce for gold. And then, as I said before, that was the first part of separating the dollar from gold. Then we get to 1971, and then that's when Nixon takes us off the gold standard. So the reason why the dollar is quote unquote as good as gold and was given the reserve status was because it was backed by gold. So because it was backed by gold for so long, even though we start slowly chipping away that link, that's what gave the dollar reserve status. And then that's what brought about the idea of fractional reserve banking and fractional reserve lending. See, so many people don't understand that. They believe that the dollar has value just because of the military, right? Or because of the petrodollar. Yes, those are reassurances. But at the end of the day, what gave the dollar reserve status initially was the fact that it used to be backed by gold. Most people don't even know that the dollar is no longer backed by gold. Now, understand, when you are trying to slowly strip away a society, communists, they believe in violence. So when you look at China, right, it's oppression right in your face. Whereas the socialists, they want to do it progressively, right? Through propaganda, through legislation, slowly. So you don't realize what's happening because you begin to think, oh, it's not that serious. But they slowly believe in trying to take away your rights and freedoms. So communists and socialists all think the same. It's just a matter of how do they bring about that change. So part of bringing about that change is that you have to understand that they have to sort of rock you to sleep. And part of that is deindustrializing the West, taking away your jobs, getting countries in massive amounts of debt out of money that was created out of thin air. This money, literally, there's nothing backing this money. So when the IMF comes to these third world countries and they give them these loans, it's part of putting them basically in debt. And I have videos covering this, especially a lot of African nations, where they're in so much debt that they couldn't even pay off the interest on the debt. And that's where we're getting to as a country, where the biggest expenditure on the federal government's budget coming up soon is actually going to be interest on the debt. And she covers this later on, where fighting the quote unquote pandemic, we've committed to $7.5 trillion. And when I say we, I'm talking about first world countries, right? When you understand that insane amount of money, now you start thinking about crypto, right? Start thinking about Bitcoin. And I always hear people talk about the volatility of Bitcoin. You're dealing with an asset that's worth like what, $220 billion? It's a baby. If in a matter of 6 months, governments went into debt, and we're talking about the major powers that be, right? Like, first world countries like Japan and United States, etc. If they are going into debt to the tune of $7.5 trillion, 7.5 in a matter of 6 to 7 months, you mean to tell me 1 trillion of those dollars can't end up into the entire cryptocurrency space? 1 trillion of those dollars can't end up in Bitcoin? See, at a certain point, you have to really start thinking bigger. Now, gold has a $10 trillion market cap. Bitcoin is trying to be digital gold, store of value. It's trying to compete. So when I hear people say, well, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, how? Describe a Ponzi scheme. Currencies can go up in value and they can go down in value. Price doesn't dictate whether or not something is or isn't a Ponzi scheme. Let me repeat that for you again. Price doesn't determine whether or not something is or isn't a Ponzi scheme. Guess what? I can buy the euro and short the dollar. That's what Forex trading is. I can buy the dollar and short the yen. I could buy the yen and short the dollar. The dollar fluctuates up and down all the time. That's what currencies, that's what they do. When you're looking, again, like I said before, when you're looking at Bitcoin, you're looking at neutral money. You're looking at money that is not controlled by anyone. You're looking at a hard asset that's harder than gold. It's scarcer than gold. This is why it's important to educate yourself as to what's to come. Different currencies, they have different use cases now. Many view Bitcoin as a blockchain 1.0, and then many view Ethereum as a blockchain 2.0. They look at Monero as a better version of Bitcoin, and I would agree. Many people look at stable coins as the way to go because there's more value transacted with stable coins than Bitcoin. I get that. That's the beautiful thing. Educate yourself about the technology. But sitting up here and saying that something's a Ponzi scheme it's just flat out ignorant, and you don't know what you're talking about, right? And I think that you need to educate yourself a little bit more, because understand, the institutions are starting to get involved. Grayscale's buying up all of the Bitcoin that you can think of. Square just dumped in, I believe Square just put in, $50 million? I'm not sure. I believe it's 50 million. We see PayPal now do a complete 180, and now they're building on infrastructure to support Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. We watch Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. They've always been involved. Now, before I get into the Creature from Jekyll Island book, you have those who claim to be intelligent and smart. And they'll say things like, well, how do you know that the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergs and the powers that be aren't behind Bitcoin? The idea of decentralization is that it's not about ownership. Follow me here. Who do you think owns most US dollars? Who do you think owns most of the wealth in the world? It's the elite. It's the wealthy. It's the rich. Who do you think owns most of the gold? So I always hear people talk about, gold and silver. I own gold. Where's my silver bar at? I own silver. Who do you think owns most of the silver and gold in the world? You think people like me and you own most of the gold and silver in the world with let's say we got $100,000, $200,000 for gold. Okay, great. Who owns the gold mines? Who owns the machinery, the equipment that goes into the ground that pulls up the gold? The elite do. So no matter what monetary system you go into, the elite will always have some type of control because they control the resources. The argument isn't about who's behind it. It's about access to the system and how much control do they have as far as manipulating the system. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Never be more than it. It's hard coded. It's capped. So you can't manipulate it. You may own most of it, but you can't manipulate and control it. Why? Because you cannot print more than 21 million Bitcoin. You can't mine more than that. Why do you think the powers that be hated gold? Because gold is God's money. You cannot print more gold. You can't go to a laboratory and make more gold. You have to physically go into the ground and find it. And the more gold that you pull out of the ground, right, the harder it becomes to find more of it. This is why consumable goods like oil or, commodities like cattle can't be used as money. Why? Because you can produce more cattle. You can produce more oil. You could just dig in the ground. And then with technology like shale technology, you can find more oil and drill more oil for cheaper. This is why they didn't use oil or cattle as money, because it's not a good form of money. Your money is supposed to be boring. It's supposed to be dull. Your money's not supposed to do anything but sit there, and when you come back to get it, it's worth the same amount it was worth when you put it in there. That's what money is supposed to do. The powers that be, they hated gold. So again, it's not about who created it and what their intentions are. It's about the infrastructure. Bitcoin is permissionless, it is censorship resistant, and it is immutable. What does that mean? You don't need an ID. You don't have to belong to a Western country in order to access it. All you need is internet access. So it's permissionless. Anyone can use it. Right? Now, are there aspects of the network architecture that may be centralized? Yes, there are. For example, mining, but that's a function of the way that markets are structured. And this is why I keep stressing to you, you need to get involved in My Tech Academy so that you could be educated, because these things are going to happen. Every cryptocurrency has pros and they have cons. Find the ones that make sense to you. Now, let's get to my favorite book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, so that we can kind of educate ourselves about the Bretton Woods Agreement and how it came about and what were the intentions. Because, see, I believe that if you understand history doesn't repeat itself, but it damn sure rhymes. And we're seeing so many things that rhyme. Bailouts have been going on for decades. Many people believe that the bailouts were something new in 2008. They don't realize that railroads were bailed out, states were bailed out. New York City was bailed out at one point. Like literally, bailouts have been going on for decades. So if you go to the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and you read page 179, it starts off by saying, the 1944 meeting in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, at which the world's most prominent socialists established the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank as mechanisms for eliminating gold from world finance. The hidden agenda behind the IMF/World Bank revealed as the building of world socialism. The role of the Federal Reserve is bringing that about. That's the sole purpose of the Federal Reserve. Now, if we look at page 180, it says Bretton Woods, an attack on gold. The game began at an international meeting of financiers, politicians, held in July of 1944 at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Officially, it was called the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference, but it generally referred to today as simply the Bretton Woods Conference. Two international agencies were created at that meeting, the International Monetary Fund and its sister organization, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, commonly called the World Bank. The announced purposes of these organizations were admirable. The World Bank was to make loans to war-torn and underdeveloped nations so they could build stronger economies. The International Monetary Fund was to promote monetary cooperation between nations by maintaining fixed exchange rates between their currencies, but the method by which these goals were to be achieved were less admirable. It was to terminate the use of gold as a basis of international currency exchange and replace it with a politically manipulated paper standard. I want you to understand that. A politically manipulated paper standard. Now we're going through a politically manipulated digital standard where, like Jerome Powell said, they don't even print the money anymore. They just load up a bunch of ones and zeros and send it over to this bank and send it over to that bank. And the government literally picks and chooses winners and losers. And most of the time, you and I are on the losing end of these bailouts. You had to wait 6 weeks to get bailed out. The banks and the airlines and all of these other institutions and businesses, the Fed was drawing up lending facilities for them within a matter of a week. Now, you got $1,200, and that's all you were able to receive. And it took you 6 weeks to get $1,200, and that's it. And you got some extensions in your unemployment benefits. Corporations are getting trillions of dollars. And as we play this video, we're going to get into that as well. Literally trillions. So get back to the book. It was to allow governments to escape the discipline of gold so they could create money out of nothing without paying the penalty of having their currencies drop in value on world markets. Prior to this conference, currencies were exchanged in terms of their gold value, and the arrangement was called the Gold Exchange Standard. This is not the same as the gold standard, in which a currency is backed by gold. It was merely that the exchange ratio of various currencies, most of which were not backed by gold, were determined by how much gold they could buy in the open market. Now, a lot of you hear about these secret societies. One of the major secret societies behind the International Monetary Fund's creation in the Bretton Woods Agreement was the Fabian Society. And I'm going to read this real quick to you too. This is on page 183. It says the Fabian Society. The Fabians originally were an elite group of intellectuals who formed a semi-secret society for the purpose of bringing socialism to the world, whereas communists wanted to establish socialism quickly through violence and revolution. The Fabians preferred to do it slowly through propaganda and legislation. So when you see Davos and you see the World Economic Forum, that's similar to what happened in Bretton Woods. They get together at these major conferences because they feel that they know better than you and I, that they want to bring about a great reset, that they want to solve problems that very well they've created. So you have to understand that you can look at this book and say, oh man, that's just a bunch of conspiracy talk. But when you come here and you look at this, they have the Davos World Economic Forum where they're saying they want to bring about a great reset and they want to use the pandemic to usher that in. This is not me saying this. This is Klaus saying this. This book, I believe, I'm not sure the exact time when this book was written. I believe it was written in the early 90s. If you read the book Behold the Pale Horse with Bill Cooper, he spoke about all of these things. And he even called Alex Jones a fraud, which I've been saying for a long time, but that's beyond the scope of this video. So, it says that, well, I want to read something here. It says to emphasize the importance of gradualism, they adopted the turtle as the symbol of their movement. So, every society, every group, they have a symbol. The Fabian Society adopted the turtle because they believed in moving slow and gradual. Someone posted in the chat that it's like cooking a frog. And I always use this analogy or saying, whatever you want to refer to it as, that if the water was too hot, the frog would immediately jump out. But if you put the water and you set it to the right temperature, the frog will lay on his back and enjoy it. But he doesn't realize that he's being cooked to death. And that's what's happening to Americans through the Patriot Act, through all of these different pieces of legislation that's being passed. And then you wake up one day and you can't understand what's going on with all of these different trade agreements, such as NAFTA and et cetera. These trade agreements are meant to deindustrialize the West. And the money changers, they've been working diligently at doing this. And this is why it's important to read books like this so that you can position yourself financially to thrive. I don't buy gold and silver because Warren Buffett told me to. I don't buy gold and silver because it's just a dumb rock. I buy it because it's to preserve my purchasing power. But I do also understand that I want to build wealth as well, right? If you don't have wealth, you shouldn't be buying gold and silver if you don't have wealth. What you should be doing is thinking about it in terms like this. Let's take a step back. If gold and silver are, for example, gold. I mean, if gold is a multi-trillion-dollar market, right? It's a $10 trillion market cap. And Bitcoin only has a $220 billion market cap. Which one would I want to put my money in? Let me repeat that again. I know I said a mouthful. If gold is a $10 trillion market cap, that's the market cap it has. And Bitcoin has a $222 billion market cap. Which one would I want to put my money in? The one with the smaller market cap, because it's trying to be a store of value. It's trying to be a unit of account. It's trying to compete with gold by being digital gold. Well, it would make more sense to put my money in something that's worth $200 billion that's trying to compete. Now, understand, the marketplace decides what's money. You and I don't decide. The market is supposed to decide. Yes, I believe Monero is better than Bitcoin. I believe Monero gives you better privacy, has a faster block time, all of those things. I agree. But the marketplace is deciding that Bitcoin is what they want to put their money in as far as being a store of value. Now, someone said ETH. Understand, ETH is trying to be something different. ETH is trying to be literally like a global decentralized software platform, right? As far as Ethereum. Now, ETH is the currency that underlines it. And then you have MakerDAO, which is trying to be like a reserve bank. And then you have DAI trying to be the stable coin. But that's, again, getting beyond the scope of this video. So let's get back to this. Right? Now, one of the people that was at this conference is a guy by the name of Harry Dexter White. He was the chief technical expert and the dominant force at the conference. He eventually became the first executive director for the United States at the IMF. An interesting footnote to this story is that White was simultaneously a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and a member of a communist espionage ring in Washington while he served as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. And even more interesting is that the White House was informed of the fact when President Truman appointed him to the post. The FBI transmitted to the White House detailed proof of White's activities on at least 2 separate occasions. So this is the person who's working in the White House, working with the president, who's a part of a communist espionage ring, who's a part of the Council on Foreign Relations. So if you believe just voting and, electing the right president or the right congressman or woman is going to fix these problems, you're sadly mistaken. So it says, thus, completely hidden from public view, there was a complex drama taking place in which the intellectual guiding lights at the Bretton Woods Conference were Fabian socialists and communists. Although they were in disagreement over method, they were in perfect harmony on the goal, which is international socialism. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. Oh, but capitalism has problems as well. Well, number one, we don't have capitalism in this country, right? We have capitalism for us, the poor, rugged individualism for us, the poor. But the wealthy, that's socialism, that's corporatism, that's cronyism. They get bailed out. You and I can't get bailouts and tax breaks. You and I can't get a small loan from our dad for $10 million, right? And then be able to only pay $750 in taxes. You and I can't do that. You and I can't have any control over those things, right? You and I, we have to fend for ourselves. So we may have to do capitalism, but these people at the top, they're not competing. John D. Rockefeller said competition is a sin. They don't want to compete. They don't believe in fair markets. They don't believe in free and open markets. This isn't capitalism. Because if we were living in capitalism, the airlines should be bankrupt. They should go out of business. They should have to go through bankruptcy court and restructure. And more efficient, better companies and better run businesses should be able to step in. But we know we don't have that. Those that are closest to government and the money printer tend to benefit from this type of system. You and I, we don't benefit from this system. So, it's just important to make note of that. And then one last thing I want to cover. is, let's see, I want to make sure I cover one last thing. So it says on page 187, right? Paper gold, because this is important. This is when Nixon decided to break the gold window and take that final link away from gold, where we had these free-floating currencies. It says, but the Fabian turtle was crawling toward its destination. In 1970, the IMF created a new monetary unit called the SDR, or Special Drawing Right. The media optimistically described it as paper gold, but it was pure bookkeeping wizardry with no relationship to gold or anything else tangible of value. SDRs are based on credits, which are provided by the member nations. These credits are not money. They are merely promises from the government. They are merely promises that the governments will get the money by taxing their own citizens should the need arise. So basically, they're locking you into agreements and saying that they're going to pay for this by taxing you. That's how it works. The IMF considers these to be assets, which then become the reserves from which loans are made to other governments. As we shall see in Chapter 10, this is almost identical to the bookkeeping sleight of hand that is used to create money out of nothing at the Federal Reserve System. Now, I've covered this before about how the Fed creates money out of thin air. I covered fractional reserve lending and banking. Definitely go and take a look at that. Then it says, on August 15th, 1971, President Nixon signed an executive order declaring that the United States would no longer redeem its paper dollars for gold. So ended the first phase of the IMF's plan. It was not yet a true central bank. It had to depend on the central banks of its member nations to provide cash and so-called credits. But since these banks themselves could create as much money as they wished from now on, there would be no limit. The original purpose had been to maintain fixed rates of exchange between currencies. That's why they created the IMF and the World Bank. I'm going to repeat that again. The original purpose had been to maintain fixed rates of exchange between currencies, but the IMF has presided over more than 200 currency devaluations. So why did I say all of this whole mouthful? Was to get you up to speed as to what the Bretton Woods Agreement was supposed to do. But then we got the IMF, then we got the World Bank. I'm pretty sure many of you are aware of how the IMF gives out loans to third world countries and deeply indebts them and puts them in deep debt that they can't pay back. And then basically is able to go in there and take their land, take their resources. It happens in Africa. It happened to Jamaica. It's happened to a lot of other countries. And that's what's going to happen here. This whole idea of these central bank digital currencies is meant to basically say that there's too much debt in the system and then use that as an excuse to create a new currency. So now that we're up to speed on what the IMF is, let's finish listening to the things that she's saying, and then I'll give my commentary throughout the video.
Measures must remain a priority. I urge you to support production and distribution of effective therapies and vaccines to ensure that all countries have access. I also urge you to continue support for workers and businesses until a durable exit from the health crisis. We have seen global fiscal actions of 12 trillion. Major central banks have expanded balance sheets by 7.5 trillion.
Thank you for the donation, TD Hip Hop. I appreciate it. So I was wrong. She said basically the fiscal response was 12 trillion. Excuse me. The fiscal response was 12 trillion and the central banks was 7.5 trillion. Do you understand that that's all debt? That's all money that was created out of nothing. So when you tell me that Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, I have to laugh at you because the total market cap of the entire cryptocurrency, the whole entire space is $366 billion. That is a baby. That is a baby. Baby. You mean to tell me that one of those $1 trillion that all of these central banks and governments are creating out of nothing is not going to flow into DeFi? Is not going to flow into the crypto space? You have to be delusional to think that that's not going to happen. Now, you could say that this is all part of design. You could say this is all a part of a trick. Are we here to make money? Are we here to position ourselves so that we can thrive and benefit? Or are we here to sit up here and complain? As I tell you guys all the time, the world will exist. The world's not going to go away. It's just going to be the haves and the have-nots. And those who prepare properly will be positioned to take advantage of these opportunities. So let's go back to the video.
These synchronized measures have prevented
Thank you for the donation, Aaron Hutt.
destructive macro-financial feedback we saw in previous crises. But almost all countries are still hurting, especially emerging market and developing economies. And while the global banking system entered the crisis with high capital and liquidity buffers, there is a weak tail of banks in many emerging markets. We must take measures to prevent the buildup of financial risks over the medium term.
Key, she said we must build up and take proper precaution. Expect volatility. And I keep trying to tell you guys this. I believe with this election going on right now that we're going to see a lot of volatility in the stock market. We're going to see a lot of volatility in the crypto markets. And we can see a 30% drop, 20% drop. Understand that paper assets always rise. It rises faster than inflation, right? And we know that based upon government data, the way that they account it, inflation's running at 3%. We know inflation's much higher. But anyway, just take them at their word. You're going to get a lot of great buying opportunities over the next 3 to 6 months. Have some money ready. Don't panic. If you're worried about the market dropping, have some put options. Get some put options in the market. But understand, you need to make sure that you're taking yourself, that you're taking into account that there will be opportunity to buy in. We are at the very, 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 very beginning when it comes to crypto, the early stages. So when people say, oh, Bitcoin dropped 90%, you're talking about Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, and, Bill Gates are worth more than the entire cryptocurrency space. You are dealing with a baby, a tiny baby. You're early. Someone just put the stock market is 36 trillion. Actually, Rose Green, the stock market's almost $90 trillion. I did a video breaking that down. The stock market's a $90 trillion asset class. 90 trillion. 90. It's a $90 trillion asset class. And you're telling me crypto can't get one? Can't get two? Come on, man. The only way out of this is to inflate. So we're going to have a bail-in. They're going to confiscate your bank accounts. This is what's going to happen. You're going to wake up one day. It's going to be a global bail-in. Everyone's accounts are going to be confiscated, and then they're going to give you this new digital currency, right? Every nation's going at first is going to have a digital currency, and then the main person, the main architecture at the head is going to be the World Bank or the Bank of International Settlements is what's going to happen. That's what I believe is going to happen. You're going to have a bail-in. They're going to confiscate everyone's wealth, and they're going to say you have to use this new digital currency that's going to be tracked and managed and traced and everything like that. And then your taxes will be immediately, just taken out. If they want to inflate, they'll be able to just push money straight to your wallet, or they'll be able to take money out your wallet. So they'll have more control as far as inflating the currency or deflating the currency, and they'll be able to control and micromanage more as to, where funds are spent and where they are not spent is what I believe is going to happen. Thank you for the donation, Kenny D. Appreciate it. Yeah. So let's finish listening to the video.
We face what I have called a long ascent for the global economy, a climb that will be difficult, uneven, uncertain, and prone to setbacks. But it is a climb up, and we will have a chance to address some persistent problems: low productivity, slow growth, high inequalities, a looming climate crisis. We can do better than build back the pre-pandemic world. We can build forward to a world that is more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive.
Did you hear what she just said? They don't want to build back. They don't want to build back. They want to build forward. What did I say at the beginning of this video? The very people who created the problem, they're now coming to you and saying, we have the solution. Trust us. That's the true definition of insanity, to watch these things keep happening and then to believe that the people who created the Bretton Woods system, created the Federal Reserve, created the IMF, they created the problem. They created all of this debt and fractional reserve lending and credit default swaps and CDO squares and all of these different derivatives. They did. They did it. But now they're going to come here and they're going to fix the problem. Right? And this is why I can predict what's going to happen with accuracy, because I can predict human reaction. And as I said before, those of us in crypto, we're going to thrive, man. We're going to get filthy rich. Our bags are going to pump beyond our wildest dreams. Now, what that money may be worth, that's a whole nother different conversation, right? It may pump in nominal terms, but will it pump in real terms, right? Like, we don't really know, and this goes back to problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, then they come to you, they wait for you to react, and then they come to you with the solution. They already knew what the solution was because they created the problem. They are the problem. They are the parasite. That's the problem. And then now they're just waiting for you to react. So when we see, I believe the guy is George Floyd, and when we see the guy, what's the other guy, Ahmaud Arbery, they're symptoms of the problem, right? But the powers that be will use those problems and say, see, look, I'm on your side. And they'll use you to go out here. And now while you're creating all of this conflict and going back and forth for a just and noble cause, right? Not saying that race and racism isn't important. Not saying that white supremacy and these things aren't important. Not saying that income inequality isn't important. Just getting you to understand that the people who are quote unquote marching with you, offering you solutions, they don't have any solutions for the problem that's going to really solve the problem. They want to use those problems as pain points to usher in their agenda. That's the whole point, which is why you have to be very, aware as to what are you following, who are you following, and where are they leading you to. You have Joe Biden and Donald Trump as your two solutions politically. You mean to tell me in this country that you believe that a man that's senile, that's clearly suffering from dementia, and another man who's a crook, right? Who's the ultimate failed businessman. He just knows how to manipulate the laws. These are the best and brightest that we can produce. These are the best and brightest that we can produce to solve our problems. Look at Nancy Pelosi. You think that these are the people that's actually going to solve the problems? No, but they're put there as a distraction so that you and I can sit up here and we can argue about Democrats versus Republican, socialists versus communists, capitalism, race, race and racism, who created slavery, who wanted to abolish it. And while we're doing all of this debating and while we're doing all of this arguing back and forth, they're just setting up the digital economy, setting up the microchip, setting up the color system, right? They don't need to do all of these crazy things to reduce the population. You're going to reduce yourself. Now, people keep saying, what's the solution? I've been telling you what the solution is. Number one, get you some land. If you can't afford land, get you a 10, 15 man group of people whom think like you, who are willing to prepare and get on code, right? Whatever color that person may be, white, black, purple, Chinese, whatever ethnicity, race, religious beliefs, get you some people that think like you. Get your hands on some precious metals, right? Because we don't know what the future holds. Get your hands on some crypto, right? Get you a few ledgers. Where's my ledger at? I have it somewhere up here. Get you a ledger. Store your crypto on your ledger. Not your keys, not your crypto. Get you some guns. Learn about technology. Get you some skills so that when we're going through the fourth industrial revolution and we come out the fourth industrial revolution, you have the skills to be able to enter into that economy and be able to thrive in that new economy. Those are the solutions. Those are the only things you can do. Now, I had someone come in here and comment and say, he said, oh, preparing is pointless because at the end of the day, they could just wait you out. Only a fool would say that. And I'm sorry to say, I'm not trying to be, disrespectful, but, those who are prepared will succeed. And those who fail to prepare should be prepared to fail, right? I'm positioned to succeed. I'm positioned for the hereafter. Are you? So don't tell me what's the solution. I'm giving you the solutions. Now, if you're poor, what do I always say to you? If you're poor, you should not be buying gold and silver. Hell, you shouldn't be buying crypto. You should be investing in skills to make you more valuable in the marketplace. Right on cue, look what just came out the other day. I posted this on my Instagram. This Amazon program is helping people get training, certification, and jobs in cloud computing. So don't tell me that I'm sitting here just talking about the problem. I'm pointing you to places where you can get solutions. Guess what we do on My Tech Academy? We talk about technology. We talk about web development, getting the basis of coding. We have a free 7-day trial. Don't tell me that I'm not providing you with solutions. You have to be willing to take those solutions. Now, many of you don't like these solutions. Technology is going to run the future. It's going to dominate the world. It's already dominating the world. Look at your biggest companies. Look at the FANG stocks: Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Alphabet. Should I go on? Microsoft. Apple was able to achieve a $2 trillion market cap. That's not by mistake. That's by design. Tech is the future. They're talking about central bank digital currencies as we speak. That's the future. FinTech is the future. Biotechnology, future. Get the skills that you need. I want to read this to you because this is important. And I'll post this in the chat for those of you who want to read this later on, or you could just Google it. It's the article. Here we go. It says, later in the spring, however, Gaines heard from a friend who was applying to enroll in a program with Per Schools, a nonprofit in the Northeast that trains people for tech careers. Admittedly, Gaines says his only previous tech experience was researching which new iPhone to buy, like most people. But he was intrigued by an offering to learn about the Amazon Web Services cloud platform. Both Gaines and his friend were accepted to the program. Over the summer, Gaines attended virtual lessons and completed labs through a partnership between Per Schools and the AWS Start program, where from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., he received training in Linux, Python, networking, security, and relational database skills. What the hell do I sit up here and talk to you guys about all day long? I tell you, start with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then learn Node.js for backend. So you have your JavaScript for your front end, you have Node.js for your backend, then you move to Python. then you can learn Django and Flask or whatever the case may be. I've been saying this for over almost 2 years now on this channel. And you can learn this stuff for cheap or for free. I've been telling you this over and over. We have a coding boot camp going on right now in my Tech Academy where I'm going very slow, giving you slow information so that we can start building up to the point where we're going to start building React applications, building clones of Amazon, building a clone of Netflix, building up to that point. This is the future. So don't tell me that I'm not giving you solutions. Do you want the solutions or do you want to complain about the problems? It's really up to you. Someone says, so would you recommend going to college for STEM? If it's affordable, if you can get scholarships, if you can go to community college, yes. Going to some big fancy 4-year school and going $100,000 or $80,000 into debt, I do not think that you should do that. If you're going to a community college and you may walk out with $15,000 of debt, I think it's worth it. But there's courses on Coursera. There's courses on Udacity. There's courses on Udemy, right? Or there's 12-week and 16-week programs where jobs take that. See, understanding technology, it's about what you can do. No one cares about the credential. They care about, can you actually build and can you code? When you go for an interview, I've went for interviews. They'll give you a list of questions and problems to solve. They don't give a damn about what color you are, where you went to school at. It's all about, can you solve that problem? Can you solve the problem? So when they give you this problem, you have to sit there in front of the person that's interviewing you, and you have to break down and solve that problem because it's about how you think. It's about how you think. So, like, for example, I have a GitHub repository. I have projects in my repository. I can go sit down with a job at an interview, and I can say, these are the languages that I'm proficient in, that I'm really good in. These are the languages and the frameworks that I know, that I don't know. And then I can show you projects that I've built. And then they want to see, okay, do you have a command over the language? But again, they have programs that will teach you and give you the certifications that you need. And especially when you're Black, you have access to so much funding. You just really got to go to the programs. Again, I shared this before. Udacity offers free tech training to laid off workers due to the pandemic. These are solutions. Okay, you poor. Harvard has a free CS50 lecture going on right now. Introduction to Web Development. Free on YouTube. MIT has OpenCourseWare. Harvard has OpenCourseWare. And after you complete the OpenCourseWare, I believe you have to pay like $50 or $100, and you can get your credential from them. Textbooks, everything that you need for free. It's in your face. So, where was I at? Lost track. Oh yeah, back to the IMF video. So sorry for going. Let's finish listening to the rest of this.
We must seize this new Bretton Woods moment. How? I see 3 imperatives. First, the right economic policies. What was true at Bretton Woods remains true today. Prudent macroeconomic policies and strong institutions are critical for growth, for jobs, for improved living standards. One size does not fit all. Policies must be tailored to individual country needs. Support remains essential for some time. Withdrawing it too early risks grave and unwarranted economic harm. The stage of the crisis will determine the appropriate shape of this support, generally broader early on and more targeted as countries begin to recover. Strong medium-term frameworks for monetary, fiscal, and financial policies, as well as reforms to boost trade, competitiveness, and productivity, can help create confidence for policy action now, while building much-needed resilience for the future. That includes keeping a careful watch on risks presented by elevated debt. We expect 2021 debt levels to go up significantly to around 125% of GDP in advanced economies, 65% of GDP in emerging markets, and 50% of GDP in low income.
This is the key. This is the key. She's talking about debt to GDP. Advanced economies are going to go over 100% of debt to GDP. Do you understand how insane this is? Jeff Booth speaks about it in the book, The Price of Tomorrow. Just think about how much debt's in the system. I keep telling you guys, what gives the dollar value? It's debt. If you look at all of the total debt, right? It's about like $80 trillion of debt in the public sector. There's only about 16 trillion, maybe $17 trillion of M2 supply of actual money. So there's a shortage of dollars to pay the debt. So what do you have to do? You have to keep working for dollars. That's what gives the dollar value. The fact that your mortgage is denominated in dollars. Your car loan is denominated in dollars. So guess what you have to do? You have to earn more dollars to pay your mortgage. You have to earn more dollars to pay your car note. That's what gives the dollar value. You are the battery. The problem is the debt levels are getting so high that this inflation, they can't create enough inflation fast enough to keep up with the growth of the debt. And because we have an aging population based upon demographics, and we have 10,000 boomers every day reaching retirement age, that's more people in economic activity coming out of the system. Why? Because older people tend to spend less money. And then technology makes you more efficient, so you don't need to spend as much money. Look at Zoom. Zoom is going to completely revolutionize and change the way conferences and meetings are, happen, in budgets, right? Start thinking about the cascading effects that's going to have on these big conference and convention centers, that it's going to have on hotels, on the hotel business. Think about what Airbnb did to the hotel industry. Think about what YouTube and other social media platforms are doing to the ad space and the media space, as far as news media and stuff is concerned, right? All of that's deflationary, right? Because it's more efficient and it's cheaper to produce. All of these things are important. And I encourage you to go and read Jeff Booth's book, A Price of Tomorrow. Again, these are one of the books that in my Tech Academy, I tell you guys to read about. And these are books that you should really have an understanding as to what's going on, because if you read these books, you'll know what's to come. You won't be blindsided, right? You'll have a very, very clear understanding. The book is The Price of Tomorrow. You can go right to my website, My Tech Academy, and you can click on it and buy this book here. They have audio books as well. 1984, we covered that last video. The Bitcoin Standard is a good book. What Has Government Done to Money by Murray Rothbard is another good book. And my favorite, The Creature from Jekyll Island, right? Carl Black just said Office Space. Think about what's going to happen to Office Space. All of these things are important to think about, right? Now, listening to her, and then, let's listen to Big Klaus, you'll start to see that there's a pattern here, right? And I want you to listen to, right? Go back and watch this video, the IMF, and then listen to the Great Reset when Klaus is talking. Doesn't it sound similar when they both speak?
Let's hear from the forum's executive chairman and founder, Professor Klaus Schwab.
Thank you, Adrian. It is obvious that we are in the midst of the most severe crisis the world has experienced since World War II. 75 years ago, countries and people came together to shape the post-war global order, which brought us decades of peace.
75 years ago, that's the Bretton Woods system is what he's talking about. They put the information in your face.
Increased global cooperation and prosperity to hundreds of millions of people around the world. The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the real virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. We have a choice to remain passive, which would lead to the amplification of many of the trends we see today: polarization, nationalism, racism, and ultimately increased social unrest and conflicts. But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract, particularly integrating the next generation. We can change our behavior to be in harmony with nature again. And we can make sure that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are best utilized to provide us with better lives. In short, we need a great reset. We have to mobilize all constituents of our global society to work together. We must not miss this unique window of opportunity. For this reason, I'm grateful that we are joined for this announcement of the Great Reset Initiative, not only by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, but by representatives of international organizations, business, trade unions, scientists, and above all, the young generation. Now we have the very special message from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
Your Royal Highness, Professor Schwab.
Let's see if I can find this. And I think that this is important because, again, he's talking about the Bretton Woods Agreement back in 1944, when the powers that be got together and they created this agreement for the new monetary system. And now, let's pull this up so we can see this. Give me 1 second. Right? This is the Bretton Woods agreement, right? This is the conference that they had back in 1944. Right? So, right, like this isn't some, conspiracy theory talk. These are the people that was at that conference in 44. This is the social contract that he was speaking of, right? This was slowly about deindustrializing the West, bankrupting the West, getting the West into debt, getting them off of a gold standard. And they did that. They did that. And now you can see back in 44, they got together, and he's a Fabian socialist as well, Klaus. Professor Klaus is a Fabian socialist who he's also a part of the Council on Foreign Relations. So, again, you don't have to be afraid of these things. Embrace it. Understand that, the only constant is change. And things will continue to change. And just position yourself to properly be able to benefit from that change. Expect volatility in markets. Expect crazy swings in markets. Expect the Fed to come in with a bazooka. Expect these things. Expect the money printer to go brr. Expect these things. Don't be afraid of it. That's why when people tell me, like, Bitcoin's very volatile, it's a baby. This is where dollar cost averaging comes into play. This is where your portfolio and position sizing comes into play. If you're dealing with a very volatile asset, you should be allocating smaller amounts of capital to that asset, because when it pops, it's going to far outpace any of the fixed assets that you may be in. This is why you may have some index funds and mutual funds. This is why you want to have real estate. This is why you want to have gold and silver. That gives you the stability of your portfolio. So I'm not worried about Bitcoin dropping, because I know that all my money's not in Bitcoin, or my money's not in Ethereum or Tezos or Monero or whichever protocol that you're into, right? You have an understanding as to what's going to happen. And one last thing before we go. I want to look at this guy, Raoul Pal. I encourage a lot of you guys to follow him. He is more of a macro guy, where he looks at macro themes that's happening in the economy, and he's making investments based upon the macro things that are happening in the economy. And if we come here, let's zoom in and look at what he just said recently about this. Let's find a post that he put up. 1 second. He had a nice thread about this. Let's see if I can find it. Put the key. Show thread. Here we go. He says, important thread. If you don't think central bank digital currencies are coming, you are missing the big and important picture. This is going to be the biggest overhaul of the global financial system since Bretton Woods. Talking of Bretton Woods, the IMF article alludes to a huge change coming but lacks real clarity outside of allowing more fiscal stimulus via monetary mechanisms. And tomorrow, the IMF holds a conference on digital currencies and cross-border payment systems. I'm going to do a video on that tomorrow. Literally, they're talking about cross-border payment systems right there in your face. It says, hold on, let's go back. There we go. It says, but it's not just the IMF. This was first floated by Mark Carney at the Bank of England over a year ago and set course for a new system. His big idea is to move away from the dollar using central bank digital currencies so its effects on world trade flows and debts were not so pronounced. The ECB weighed in many times in the last year, but the latest is clear. CBDCs are coming in soon because everyone wants to get away from the dollar because they know the whole purpose of the Fed was to get America in debt, to strip away your freedoms, your privacies. That's the whole point. And in China, they're the first ones rolling out their central bank digital currency. I covered that in a previous video. And we know that China, they're communists, right? So all of this is social experiments that they're testing out to see how do people basically, adopt this technology. And I encourage you to go read the thread. I'll read a little bit more from it. It says, next up was the regulatory changes in the United States, allowing for bank custody of digital assets, especially Bitcoin, i.e. the acceptance that digital assets are not going away and in fact are the future. And recently, the Cleveland ref added their thoughts. On Monday, Jay Powell gives his input on central bank digital currencies at the IMF talk listed above. Central bank digital currencies are coming and they will change everything. They are coming under stealth of ex-border payments, but it means so much more. And again, you can go here and read the entire thread that he put together. But I laugh when I hear people talk to me about Bitcoin being some type of a Ponzi scheme or scam. You don't understand economics and you don't understand, currency and money if you're sitting up here referring to Bitcoin as being a Ponzi scheme. Because number one, the whole purpose of money is not to be speculated on, right? You and I, if we're investing in Bitcoin, we're speculating. The technology works. Think about this. That's like saying, Apple's a scam because the stock goes down. My iPhone works whether the stock is up or down. If Apple stock is up 20% or down 20%, my phone still works. The price of Apple stock has nothing to do with the technology. The price of Bitcoin has nothing to do with transactions. If you give me your public address, I can send you Bitcoin. Whether Bitcoin is up $20,000 or down $20,000, right? I can send you my Bitcoin, right? The technology works, whether it's up or whether it's down, period. And then when you start looking at stablecoins, again, is a new, it ushers in a new, more efficient way of transferring money. But then there's counterparty risk because you're depending on the fact that that peg is going to work properly, that is pegged 1-to-1, and that whoever's taking custody of the dollars are doing the right thing and not issuing more units of account than they actually have reserves, right? So there's trade-offs for whatever way you want to go. And I think that it's just important for you to educate yourself on the technology so that you're not making asinine and just stupid statements about things that you just don't know what you're talking about. Because again, the best and brightest are getting involved in this. So unless you can tell me that unless you can show me in the code, right, or based upon economics that this is some type of a scam, then, you're just basically making an appointment. Yeah, you don't need a whole Bitcoin. Remember, Bitcoin's a currency, right? You could buy Satoshis. That's why they call it stacking sats. Think about it, like for $1, like you have quarters, you have pennies, you have nickels, right? So you don't have to buy a whole dollar, right? There's smaller denominations of Bitcoin. I would not touch any exchange like Ameritrade, what's the other one? Robinhood, any of these places that's offering you some, derivative of Bitcoin where you don't control your private keys. I would not be messing with that unless you're just saying to yourself, listen, I just want to make a quick buck. I just really want to trade this stuff. I don't really care about the technology, and that's okay. All I can do is give you the information, right? I cannot tell you what you should or should not do with your money. Only you know what you should do with your money. So I can't tell you which one is better or worse, but I do know this. Watch what happened to OKX, where I believe the one of the lead people of the exchange who basically maintains and holds the private keys, they went missing, and they're going on an investigation. That's problematic. I've lost a lot of Bitcoin messing with Mt. Gox. Excuse me. Not your keys, not your crypto. Get a ledger. I have a video teaching you how to use your ledger. Put your crypto on a ledger, because now you're your own bank. You control your own keys. Very, very important. Very, very key that you understand this. Taking custody of your crypto is important. And I teach you all of those things as well. Again, if you're interested in learning about cryptocurrencies, we have My Tech Academy. We have a free 7-day trial. I cover all of the basics from Bitcoin to Ethereum. The next course I cover Monero as well with privacy coins. The next course we're going to get into is into DeFi, decentralized finance, because I just feel that, yes, DeFi has a lot of risks, but it also has a lot of reward. And I think that it may be over your head for those of you who are new. But I think that if you go slow and you start with Bitcoin and you understand the pros of Bitcoin and also the cons of Bitcoin, and you understand why Ethereum was created and what Ethereum brings to the table versus Bitcoin, then you can understand now what Tezos is trying to do or what Cardano is trying to do. You can then understand DeFi and why DeFi is going to be important. When Satoshi created Bitcoin, he only had currency in mind. And the problem just isn't the currency, but it's the entire financial system. And having smart contracts be able to automate that and take out these third-party parasites, I think is going to be extremely important. Sadly, though, with DeFi, it's really starting to mimic a lot of CeFi, centralized finance. And, that could be a good thing and a bad thing. But at the end of the day, listen, from an investment standpoint, most of us, we're going to get filthy rich. I truly believe that. We're very, very early in the game. Ethereum may be king now, but Avalanche can easily take over Ethereum. Tezos could easily one day leapfrog it. We don't know, right? Right now, we do know, though, based upon human capital and financial capital and intellectual capital, Ethereum is dominating the space. They have all of the tooling, all of the apps, all of the things that's being built. So that's the king on the block. So that's what we're going to focus on when we get into DeFi. Great Filibuster says running your own node versus using a ledger. Running a node is always going to be the best way if you know how to properly run a node and you can verify that you have the proper implementation. Then yes, running a node will always be better than a ledger. But again, that's for people who are real tech savvy. Like, do you really know what you're doing to properly be able to verify your transactions and sign your transactions and stuff like that? So I think a ledger is much easier for the average person to use. Andreas Antonopoulos, he speaks about this, and he says, you need to think about security based upon your technical capabilities. If you're not that tech savvy, then maybe just buying on Coinbase and leaving it there may be the best thing for you. May not be the safest thing in terms of controlling your keys and controlling your crypto, but if you're an older person and you're not that tech savvy, maybe you might want to just leave your crypto on the exchange. Now, if you're very, very tech savvy, then you can really start getting into multi-signature wallets and, all of that type of stuff if you're very, very tech savvy. But I think that you need to make sure that you are really understanding the technical capabilities of yourself. Because remember, you lose your private keys, it's over. You send your crypto to the wrong address, in most cases, it's over. So really just keep that in mind, great filibuster, about your technical capabilities. I personally think a ledger is the best way to go, in my opinion. I've been using Ledger for years now. I haven't had any problems. Mm-hmm. I like what you said. Just posted. Rose Green. She said people forget that in 2010 the world's highest market caps were oil companies. Fast forward now, it's big data. The next line up of high market caps will be blockchain and hash graph based. So early. I 1,000% agree with you. 1,000% agree with you, Rose Green. People don't understand how early we are. We're so early. Just think about it. Gary Vee was saying this before. If you came to someone and said to them 15 years ago that you would feel safer dating someone off of an app than like meeting people in person, you would say that's crazy. People wouldn't want to do that. But yet you have sites like Christian Mingle, Married.com, where people meet and get married off of a website. You have cell phone devices and tablets that this tablet has more computing power than the best computer 10, 15 years ago. Look at Uber, how, the shareable economy is so big and it's only going to get bigger. You couldn't predict these things, or people who were predicting them were laughed at. And then now look at it. These things are huge. Look at Tinder. Richard Hart said this: 2 people get rich in crypto, founders and holders. If you're holding your crypto, you're going to make a lot of money. Look at the people in Chainlink. 2 years ago, you could have purchased Chainlink for 18 cents. Could have got it for 30 cents. Look at Chainlink now. $10.87. I was telling you guys about Chainlink back when it was at $2. $2. And if you understand that the only way to get external data into the blockchain is with an oracle, then you understand that Chainlink's going to be massive. It's only worth $4 billion today. I keep telling you, I easily see Chainlink worth $50 to $100 billion. Easy. Any DeFi application that you want to name, any one of these, software protocols, right? These protocols that can launch dApps, they're going to need Chainlink. You need an oracle. You need some type of middleware. We're early. And then there's oracles, I believe, Band Protocol's another one. There's so much opportunity in this space for just investing, from employment, from opportunities, from as an entrepreneur. Like, I can go on for days. Someone just asked me about BlockFi. I haven't even had a chance to really look into it because I'm into Maker and Dai and so many. There's Balancer. There's so much going on. There's no way one person can keep up. That's the beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. It's opportunity everywhere. Then you have to keep up with the economy. There's so much happening. Get involved. From a technological standpoint, I'm telling you, it's there. So again, we have My Tech Academy. You're welcome to sign up. Free 7-day trial. You have Udacity. You have Udemy. You have Amazon. I posted the link for this as well. You have OpenCourseWare. There's no excuse for you not to be prepared. Right? There's no excuse for you not to be prepared for what's coming. Now again, if your preparation doesn't work out, and hey, you say, listen, I gave it a try. But throughout my course as an entrepreneur, I've realized that when preparation meets opportunity, success is inevitable. And that's just the reality. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to end the video like this. We constantly keep hearing them say that we need a great reset. We need a new monitor. We need to utilize this moment as a new Bretton Woods moment to draw up a new social contract. I covered in the book of the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. G. Eric Griffin covered all of this. This isn't nothing new. This is a repeat as to what happened back in 1944. Fabian socialists and communists got together and they focused on a way to break the West. The West is broken. America will no longer be the same. When we come out of this pandemic, we will go through the fourth industrial revolution, which will be dominated by technology. It's not just coding. I tell you guys before, networking, big data, artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, all of that stuff is technology. Apps, dApps, all of that's technology. And whether it's from an entrepreneur standpoint, whether it's from an employment standpoint, you don't have to just be a coder. From a legal standpoint, if you're into law, focus on learning the laws about technology and getting involved in that. From a lobbyist standpoint, from a political standpoint, like there's so many avenues that you can get involved in tech. Get yourself involved. So with that being said, guys, please like the video, share the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. For those of you who want to contact me, a link to my Instagram will be in the description below. Join my mailing list so that you'll be notified when I go live. If you're interested in learning about blockchain technology, learning about coding, we have a free 7-day trial with My Tech Academy. A link for that will be in the description as well as in the chat. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a blessed and beautiful night.